Hey, everybody, this is Jonathan, one of your hosts of the Think Global podcast. And first of all, thank you for listening. And second of all, just want to let you know today's podcast is the beginning of season 3. We're so excited. We've had a great time doing seasons 1 and 2, and this season is no different. We have a lot of great content on deck for you. So enjoy this episode, the first episode of season 3.
Hey everybody, it is February 2023. Hard to believe, John. We are back with our podcast.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be back. We've been around the world and back. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But the Think Global podcast, where the world is our home, where strangers become friends and friends become family. And we have been around the world seeing our friends.
Yes, we have. We were in Thailand, Bangkok, Thailand, with about, good grief, I hate to say it, but 200 of our friends. We got a lot of friends, man.
Wow, we're popular.
Yeah. That was a fun time, though, to hang out with people, post-COVID.
Yeah. First time we've done an event really of that size since COVID. We've done some other smaller ones, which have been also really good. But this one, to have that many people was really
a lot of our colleagues there. And really, we do call them our friends because they are our friends. And it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And actually, it was awesome to have some of our friends from Laos bring us bags of saffron coffee. So shout out to those people because they remembered a podcast where we talked about coffee from Laos.
Yeah, the pea berry flavor.
Yes.
Oh, so good.
Saffron
I've been drinking it
coffee.
actually this week. So to those of you who gave that to us, just know it's going to good use.
Well, actually, I just ran out of my very common coffee beans. I was about to say which ones they were, but I'm not going to do that. My very common coffee beans were used up this morning, and there were the 2 bags of saffron coffee waiting to be opened. So I'm going to crack mine open probably 2 days from now. I'll jump into them. So I'm looking forward to it. So thank you guys. Also awesome to know that there are a lot of you guys out there who are listening to this, and thanks for interacting with us and talking to us about it.
It was, we just sit here and just talk to each other. We don't really know who's listening. So it was fun to talk to people who enjoy the podcast and a lot of fun compliments.
Yeah, at least 2 people. I'm joking.
At least
there were
2.
more. Anyway, so
all
that was
2 of you.
fun.
Thank you so much for listening.
Right. That was a lot of fun. Anyway, great to connect and nice to see people. Anyway, that was good. All right, John. Today we actually sent out an email to some of those people who have been listening and asked them to give us some ideas, and some good ideas generated. We were grateful for that. By the way, we want to encourage that for the future as well. But out of a response, we have the direction of our conversation this morning.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk a little bit about our screen time, meaning our devices. And we've talked about that in previous podcasts a little bit here and there because it's come up in maybe books that we've read or other things. So, but we're going to really dive into it this one, just how it's affecting our relationships, our work, our overall productivity. And while some podcasts get into like the science or the neuroscience behind it, we determined that we're not smart enough for that. But
we're not. We're not experts in this field, but we want to create a conversation.
Yeah, that's really what we're trying to do. Yeah. And just give you something to think about here at the beginning of a new year. We're just now in February. So if you're thinking, well, I really want to make 2023 the best year possible, maybe this will give you some things to think about.
That's right.
As you do that.
And actually, in a conversation like this, it's not to have people set all these new goals and, that type of thing for their lives. It's basically to create a direction in life. Yeah. And a conversation like that helps this with us.
So let's set the stage. We did email a couple of people and we just said, hey, what should we talk about on the podcast? What would you like to listen to? As they said they enjoy the podcast, we just thought we'll put the ball in their court and say, well, what would you enjoy listening to? So one person sent us this story back, which I thought was really interesting of how, I'm not paraphrasing the story, but he basically, he lives in Southeast Asia. His phone fell off of a motorbike, got run over by a motorbike, and therefore his phone was destroyed. Right. This is probably a common occurrence in Southeast Asia. But through a series of circumstances, he was locked out of having a cell phone for like 2 weeks.
Right.
So no phone for 2 weeks.
Right.
And I think what he said was interesting was the first few days, it was like an addict coming off of a drug.
Right.
Right. Like withdrawals and the anger, like all the emotions.
Yeah.
And then after that, he began to feel a little bit free from that device. And now in hindsight has his phone back and got it all back together. But in hindsight, he's like, wow, that was really good for me to have that break.
Right.
And so while this podcast isn't advocating for throw away your cell phone, like that's not what we're going to talk about. We're not swinging the pendulum all the way over and saying, well, smartphones are bad. Everybody go get the flip phone and go back to 1994. Like we're not doing that.
Right.
But we are going to talk about moderation.
Right.
And I think that's what this friend of ours learned in the process. He has his phone back. He's back to having a smartphone. But I think through those 2 weeks, he learned a lot about moderation.
Right. And that's the big deal. All things in moderation, even a great device that we do all have in our hands.
Yeah.
There was a quote that he gave us from Andy Stanley.
Yeah. Andy, if you don't know, Andy Stanley is he's a pastor, but he also writes a lot about leadership. He's a leadership guy, but he's a pastor as well. But I thought this was really funny. People have asked him in the past, Andy, how did you write 27 books? Which I didn't know he wrote 27 books. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That's an amazing feat no matter what. But anyway, they said, how did you write 27 books? And his response was, I wrote them while you were watching TV.
Yes, that's good.
I love that. And I wonder, I don't know when he said that quote. Sometimes I wonder if he was asked that today, he might say, I wrote them while you were scrolling Instagram.
Right. That's exactly right. So, and I thought that was fascinating. Last night I was listening to Discipline is Destiny by Ryan Holiday. And essentially he said the same thing, that he has made the choice, the conscious choice to limit his device time because he found that it got in the way of writing books. And he's writing books. He's out there writing books. That's his occupation. That's his calling. That's who he is. And he does a great job, but he's had to make the choice somewhere to do the things that matter versus the things that just consume his time. So similar thing, probably a different time period. Anyway.
So you and I had a similar thought as we were thinking about this podcast. You're kind of thinking in your own way. I'm thinking in my own way. And we came together to talk about what we were going to discuss. And I think we both had a similar thought of, let's not just talk all negative. I mean, there's some positive things about what technology has afforded us. And, there's definitely some negatives. We're going to talk about that in a minute too. We've kind of alluded to some of them, but let's talk about some of the positives first. Let's start with a positive note.
Okay. Yeah. A positive note. Like, for example, on my device, that's where I have my music. And I actually am a very creative thinker when it comes to sitting down and having music in the background. There's just something about the way my brain is wired that a little bit of music, not necessarily distracting music, but good music, lends itself to creativity in my life. And so that's a part of my device world. I read my news from the Wall Street Journal. Well, I happen to open up my phone, and that's where I read it because that's where I get it. And so that's also device time. So I find my information, about the world through my device. I read books on my device. So all of that is good. It's good for my brain. It's good for my heart. And there are other books that I read that I really need that are on my device. So it's a part of my world in that way.
Yeah. And I think the access to real-time information is helpful as well because, people, it goes both ways. They also say like, wow, the 24-hour news cycle is really killing us and we're learning things we should never learn about so quickly and all that. But I think there's actually a value to it. Like, for example, the day that we're recording this podcast, so we don't know when people are going to listen to it, but today or overnight, there was a major earthquake in Turkey.
Right.
People are probably very aware of. Well, in almost real time, because we have friends in Turkey, both U.S. nationals and locals.
Right.
Almost in real time, we got texts saying, hey, there's been an earthquake. Everybody's okay. The people that we know, obviously, I read this morning over 1,500 deaths so far. I don't know what the total is going to be. I don't know the facts, but obviously there's been a lot of death and destruction. But in terms of people that we know, we were assured this morning that everybody's safe, everybody's accounted for. That's good information to know. And without the phone, we wouldn't know that. And then speaking of the world, connecting our friends, earlier this morning, I got another text from a friend 2,000 miles away who cares about me and knows that we have friends there. He says, hey, I heard about the earthquake. Is everybody okay?
That's right.
So I think that's a positive.
That's a positive. And just on a practical, personal level, like Lynn and I have 10 grandchildren. We've got 4 sons, 4 daughter-in-laws, and we're kind of spread out. And there's nothing better than a great FaceTime call or text and keeping in touch with them. So even from a parental point of view, it's just nice to know, like, where are the kids? What do they need? How are things going? So there are so many great uses to our devices that really are a blessing. Just like any other technological advance that helps our lives. We're healthier, we drive safer, et cetera, devices have a very positive impact, and we should be aware of that.
Yeah. So I just didn't want to paint the picture that it's all negative.
That's
but
right.
There are some downsides, let's be honest. And I think people are aware of them, but let's talk about some of the negatives that we've observed, obviously outside of what people who are way more experts than us would talk about neuroscience, but we don't want to go there. But what are some of the negatives?
All right, and I'll start that, but then you can also, I know you've got some information to share here as well, but I do know that personally I have stepped back from some of the social media platforms simply because I found myself too much of my time given to that. And then when you give yourself to that, then you're introduced to remodeling projects that you should be involved in, someone else's home, someone else's car, or the advertisements that are there. And it does create this sense of discontent, and your brain just goes in directions it shouldn't. And it takes life from just that being simply happy with who you are, where you are, what you have, to this comparison game.
Oh, yeah.
And that began to drive me crazy that I even saw that in myself. And so the easiest solution for me in many ways was just simply get off of it. I don't need to spend my time there because it can be very controlling.
Yeah.
Even to the point of how many people like my post. Like, let's be honest, some of us need that for our self-esteem or whatever it is. And if we don't get enough likes, so we feel down and we got to post again. And so there is that addiction that I know that it's easy to feel. And so just for me, it was just simpler to say, you know what, I don't need that competition in my mind.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's also a false sense of community that it gives you as well. Like, oh, I'm seeing this person's life. I'm seeing what they're doing. I'm seeing their kids, or I'm seeing whatever. And you feel more connected to that person than you really are. And I've actually seen that play out. I don't post a lot on social media. I look kind of for that reason. I look to see what people are doing or whatever, but I don't post a whole lot. But sometimes I'm with people, maybe I haven't seen them for a long time, and it's almost like I have no new information to give them because they're like, oh, I saw that on your wife's Instagram.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I saw that you went there. Oh, I saw that you did that.
Right.
I'm like, well, what do we have to talk about?
Right.
You already know everything about me.
Right.
But it's a false sense of community. You and I both know they don't know everything about me.
Right.
They know that too, but they know the things I've done. So anyway, it creates a challenge of authentic community.
Right. And actually, we end up being experts at knowing 1,000 people, but not really knowing one person really, really well.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the challenge. We have friends from many years past that we've seen on social media. We understand it, but actually, we don't know what's going on in their life.
Right.
We don't, because of that sense of not having community with them, which is really more of a face-to-face conversation over a cup of coffee, at a meal, and on a consistent basis.
Right.
We seem to water down what real relationships are about. That's part of the danger, I think. Yeah.
And then there's a danger in person. I was thinking about this as well. It's like, let's say we're hanging out and you're constantly distracted by your phone. You're constantly looking at something like, well, am I not that important? Like, is whatever is on that 4.5-inch screen more important than our conversation?
Right.
And that drives me nuts. I do have a few friends that I hang out with, and they might listen to this. Maybe it's good that they listen to this.
Yeah.
And that over dinner or over coffee or whatever we're doing, they're constantly looking at their phone.
Right.
So much so that I've gone through, I'll just keep talking sometimes, like just to prove a point. Like I'll just keep on with whatever story I was telling. And then they finally almost like check back into reality. Right. It's like, oh, what were you talking about?
Right.
Like they are gone.
Right.
Which is another point I thought about probably 12, 15 years ago. I was really good friends with this professor at the university that I went to. He was a communications professor, did a lot of his research around communication and whatnot, but we used to go to lunch all the time. And this is the early days of smartphones. And we didn't talk about this story. That's why you're looking at me like, what is he about to say?
Go for it, man.
But we went to lunch. This one time, we used to go to lunch all the time. But over lunch one time, my phone dinged, and I looked at it. And as soon as I put it back down, he said, everything okay? And I said, yeah, it's fine. That was whoever it was, a friend or whatever. And he began to lecture me, kind of in a funny way. We were really good friends, but in a fun way. He was saying, scientifically, what happens when you look at that phone is that you disappear from where you currently are. He said, you might as well just vanish into outer space. And then when you're done looking at that phone, you just come back to where you are.
That's right.
And I've watched that play out with friends who I don't know if it's a lack of ability to multitask. I don't know what it is, but they look at their phone and they might as well have just gone to a different planet.
Right.
And they're not hearing anything I'm saying. They're not in the room anymore.
Right.
And then they kind of snap back.
Right.
It's a weird thing. So I think that's also a negative of the smartphone thing that we're in is people looking at their device instead of being with the people that they're with. And so anyway, I try to be aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think the point we're making is it robs us from what genuine community can bring.
Yes.
And we always have to remember that it's a substitute of the real thing.
Yeah.
And the real thing, real community, tastes a lot better.
Yeah.
It's much more of what we're designed and made to be. Yeah. That brought up when you were talking about how quickly our minds disengage from what's real, what's in front of us, to that which was on your phone, to that book that we both read, Indistractable.
Oh yeah.
A number of years ago.
Yeah.
And actually, I would recommend that highly to people to read. It's a simple read. Indistractable is the name of the book, and I can't remember the author's name.
Oh gosh, I'm not going to think of it.
But if you look up Indistractable, it's easy to find. Yeah. But actually, it talks about how notifications can become a big distraction even to working.
Yeah.
Like you're engaged in work, you check your cell phone, and all of a sudden you're now way behind in what you should be thinking about. And so Indistractable, talking about meetings that you have where cell phones are put down, you can't look at them because they are a distraction to a good meeting. Where when you're on a Zoom call with multiple people and they're texting each other, well, you've lost the meeting.
Yeah.
Or just sitting there plugging away and a cell phone notification pops up and you got to respond to it. For that reason, by the way, it's been a fun exercise that I'm still doing. It's been months now. I took off all notifications.
Which drives me nuts because you don't see my texts.
I know. That's what makes me happy, actually. So I've actually done that. It's everybody. And the next time I see who's sent a text is when I actually look at it. I took off WhatsApp and the messaging from my computer screen, and it's actually been liberating to have control of when I look at a message. Now, if there's an emergency, I've got to be careful, but it's been liberating. I haven't gone back. I thought I'd go back to just getting those instant notifications that pop up on my screen to let me know somebody sent a text, but it's been kind of enjoyable because I control then the information feed to me, and then I can control when I respond to people. So that's been a good exercise for me. Maybe that's something we ought to try.
No, I like that. Well, you're already trying it, but it is difficult because I might text you something that I need an answer on, and then I never hear from you.
But John, knowing that you are 20 steps away from me, just walk over, fella.
I'm just kidding. It's okay.
Come on, man.
Well, again, back to all things in moderation, right? So it's easy to draw these black and white lines, like a little bit what you were talking about a minute ago of like dings and meetings. Yes, that's important. But at the same time, I was thinking the other night, I went on a date night with my wife. And one of the first few date nights we've had since having a baby. We have a 9-month-old, and we haven't done very many of these. We haven't trusted him with babysitters very much. But we finally went the other night. Well, at the dinner table, my wife's phone was on the table, and I wanted her to put it away. Because I was not just thinking about this podcast, but just thinking in general, I don't want the distraction. I want to be here with her. And her phone was on the table. Well, all things in moderation. I knew she had a little bit of anxiety about the babysitter. She wanted to be able to get a text from the babysitter if something happened.
Right.
So I didn't even say anything to her. I just had that quick thought in my head. I thought, leave it on the table.
Yeah.
It's fine. She's just doing that because the babysitter might text.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
That's totally okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get that. So that's good. I mean, that's the moderation principle. All right, let's talk about some numbers real quick because these are fun.
Oh, gosh.
Actually, this is what kind of gets me worked up.
We're going to do math.
Yes, let's do some math. So, all right, the average person is on their device how many hours per day?
7.
7
Nearly
hours per day.
7 hours a day.
That's right.
That's staggering.
That's global, right? That was a global number. So that changes when it comes to generations. Generationally, I'm sure, because I think we have a number here for Gen Z, they average 9 hours per day.
Wow.
You know what? And I want to be fair to the Gen Z. Like if you're retired and you actually might be kind of bored, like a retired person who's in their 70s might be at 9 hours as well. So I want to be fair there.
Yeah.
It's not a generational thing, but it's just maybe they know how to use it. They grew up with it, and we get it, and we understand it. But let's do some math. I think that's what would be fun.
Yeah, well, I think the math part is what blew me away was, let's say it is 7 hours. Let's say you're 4 hours. Let's say somebody else is 6 hours. Like whatever it is. And we're not saying cut it all out.
No.
But the numbers I've been playing with is like, what if you just reduced it by 1 hour a day? You went from 7 to 6, or you were at 5, you went to 4.
Yep.
Like, just reduce it by 1 hour per day. And that would be, everybody do the math with me, 365 hours a year.
That's right.
That's unbelievable.
Which is how many days? I believe it's 15
days. What I love to do, here's this fun math. The math nerds are loving this right now.
Yeah.
If there's 40 hours in a work week and you get 365 hours back out of the year, that's 2 months of work back.
That's right.
In your life.
That's fun.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And if you multiply that over a 10-year period, because that's the way my mind is thinking now. I'm at the at the other end of life.
Yeah.
Like I don't have, I can see the finish line almost there. Like if I've got 20 to 30 years left, that's years that I add back to my life of investing in things that really matter.
Right.
That's the big deal.
And we're talking about 1 hour, shaving 1 hour off of your phone addiction.
Right.
Phone use.
Yeah. And just imagine though, like, so it's not just like shaving off an hour and then what,
right?
But it's actually replenishing it with things that really matter, like reading a good book, watching the sunset, getting up, exercising in the morning, doing things that are profitable with that time that you save. That's the value of it all.
Yeah. I love to observe when the things that people say they don't have time for.
Right.
I don't have time for that. I don't have any time for that. I don't have any time.
Right.
You have time for the things that you prioritize.
That's right.
So you magically had time for those like 30 Instagram posts you put up last month. Like,
that's right.
Like maybe that was important to you.
Right.
That I guess that's okay.
Yeah.
But don't say this is really important to me. I just don't have time. And then if we audit how you spend your time, you're just scrolling Instagram.
That's right.
Well, you had time. It just wasn't as important as you said it was.
Yeah.
Anyway, that sounded harsh, but it's true.
No, it's very true. And again, here, the point that we stated earlier, this is the beginning of the new year. It's only February. Imagine if we just made that 1 hour difference per day. By the end of the year, what could happen? So it's just a trend. It's like maybe shave off 30 minutes, then shave off an hour. But think of the ways you can positively backfill that time to make a positive impact on your own life. That would be super cool.
Okay, let's challenge each other.
All right.
We have more to talk about. We probably have more things to talk about, but here's the quick challenge.
Yes.
I think I sent you a screenshot of mine the other day because I was kind of proud of it. It was like 2.5 hours. I was like, wow, that's a lot lower than I expected. Maybe I had a bad week last week.
Yeah. I think it was a bad
maybe
week.
That's actually a good week based on what we're talking about. But anyway, maybe it was inaccurate. Anyway, you look at yours, I'll look at mine. Whatever it is, let's try to shave an hour off of it.
That's right.
So if mine is 2.5, I'm going to go to 1.5.
All right, I'm going to hold you accountable.
But we're going to look yours up
after we're done recording. We're going to do that, and then we'll see what we can do to shave off some time for ourselves.
Anna, our podcast producer, is going to do it too.
Yes.
Anna? Yeah, she said yes.
We're all into this thing right now. I will say, I would encourage folks to actually look a little bit deeper. I mean, we're just kind of hitting the surface, but look a little deeper. I mean, there, like one of the stats we have here, the University of Michigan did a big study of 14,000 college students. And what they found was this, that with the rise of social media and technology, there has actually been a sharp decline of empathy and compassion. Like the device use has separated us from the real hurts, real issues, real challenges of life. And that's what applies to us as when we sit here talking about think global, right? When we think of the world, the more we detach ourselves from the world, the less empathetic we are, the less compassionate we are. That's where I think it calls us to get back into the lives of people, real community, real conversations, feeling real empathy, real compassion to others, and even asking the question, what impact is this having upon my closest of relationships? So I think there's a lot of research to be done. There's a lot of thinking to do. There's a lot of important things to discuss, but you and I are just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
I would say as we land this plane, what actually hit me over the weekend as we were preparing for this was, the Bible is a great resource of truth and of information. And the Bible throughout reminds us that life is very short. The brevity of life is real. It's sort of like the grass that grows up in the morning but is withered by the end of the day, that life is a vapor. And so when you think of the brevity of life, and by the way, none of us have a guarantee, of tomorrow.
Right.
So, what will I give myself to today? Will it be the artificial? or will it be something that's real and in-depth and something that matters, that makes a difference in the lives of other people? And so that's really that think global idea, where we are a global community and how we choose to be involved in that community in real time with real people, with real hurts and with real joys. That's what we're after. So what makes us better today and how we use our time, that's the big deal.
Yeah, I love that. So the moral of the story is audit your time.
Yes.
And use your phone with moderation.
Yes.
But if I text you, text me back.
I will text you back in due time without distraction. But anyway,
but you're right. That's exactly right. Our life is very fleeting. It's very quick, and we only have one of them.
Right.
We only get one time to do this, one shot at it,
Yeah.
and I want to give it the best shot I have.
So today, moderation in all things, and use technology wisely, but never at the expense of people.
I love that. I love this topic. I love that we got somebody to prompt us to talk about this.
Yes.
If you have something you want us to talk about, dear listener, please email us, write us, go to the website.
Yes.
letsthinkglobal.com.
Yes.
And send us a message. We would love to dive into some topics with you.
We'd love to hear from you guys. Again, this is Think Global, where the world is our home, where strangers become friends and friends become family. Until March, you guys have a great month.